At 19 years old, I feel like I've lived a lot of life. And going into my first year of college, I wondered which parts would stay the same and which parts would simply fade away. And although my life can't be summed up into 3 interests, I think these 3 make for a great window into what makes me me. And I hope by the end of this speech, you'll all have a great understanding of who I am. The 3 interests I'm going to tell you about today are my love for basketball, music, and pro wrestling. And I'm going to start by talking about basketball. For most of my childhood, I could never find a sport that I liked to play. And this was until the 8th grade, when I made a friend who was big into basketball and I decided I wanted to learn how to play. My dad signed me up for a basketball camp and then a basketball league. And going into my freshman year of high school, all I could think about was being a part of the team. Unfortunately, when tryouts came around, I met the harsh reality that I was too inexperienced to be a part of the team. However, the varsity coach noticed my dedication and offered me a role as the team manager, which I graciously accepted. And while for the remainder of high school I never quite made the team as a player, I always came back as a team manager because I genuinely loved the sport that much. And I'll never forget the moment my sophomore year when the JV coach let me suit up for the last home game of the season and I hit a 3. Going into my first year of college, I thought my love for basketball would start to fade away. However, this could have been further from the truth, as my friends and I decided to try intramural basketball, and it ended up being a great experience. Next, I'm going to tell you about my love for music. When I was in 3rd grade, I used to get bullied a lot for my height, and it really ruined my confidence, which ended up leading me to go to therapy. My therapist taught me to use music as a coping mechanism and an outlet for my emotions, and this led me to start writing my own music. By 8th grade, I was writing, producing, and releasing music to a platform called SoundCloud under the name Colin Meyer, and everybody in school knew me by this name. For a while, I wanted to pursue music as a career. However, by the time senior year came around, I started to realize that this was pretty unlikely, and because of this, I started to grow apart from my music. Going into my freshman year of college, I didn't think that I would rekindle my passion for music. However, this also was far from the truth, as I found myself creating music again in my free time. And while I haven't released any new music since high school, I'm glad that my passion hasn't completely faded. Finally, I'm going to tell you about my passion for pro wrestling. Growing up, I spent a lot of summers in New York with my grandparents and cousins, and when I was 9, my cousin Dylan introduced me to WWE, and I was instantly obsessed. For years, I watched WWE and learned more about it. Around 2021, I started to fall out of love with WWE as I started to focus on things like basketball and music. Until 2024, I stopped watching for a while, but in 2024, during a trip to New York, Dylan and I spent a whole night talking about WWE and reminiscing on it, and it really reignited my passion. And ever since then, I've been thoroughly invested, watching it every single week. Ultimately, I think my passion for pro wrestling will never die, and I one day can't wait to tell my kids all about it. In conclusion, I've told you about my experiences as a basketball player, the ups and downs I've met with music, and my all-around love for pro wrestling. As I stated before, although I can't be summed up into my 3 interests, I think these 3 make for a great window into what makes me me. And I hope you all have a great understanding of who I am as a person. Thank you.